Well, attributes is basically the store that we keep in an object. We sometimes call them instance variables and also data members. You might think it like the features of an object. When you talk about a human, like what does a human have like a feature? Well, they should have, I don't know, age, gender, name, and so on and so. You can think all of these things. So we will call them attributes. And we define them, each attribute within a class with some, for now we will talk about the privates, and then a data type, like it can be integer, string, or any data type, or maybe it can be another object. Like maybe I'm defining a student class, and then the classes that the student took enroll in so far. Then maybe that's can be also an attribute. So maybe I will define also a class object that as an attribute I will keep it like a class array for the student class. So it doesn't have to be always a raw data type like integer, float, boolean, and so on. It can be also an object itself. And these values will be kept in the memory as long as the object is used in our program. And I think I had talked about this private accessor in the previous slides. In the previous lectures, I will go very briefly. And then in the following slides, we will see them in a much more detail. But basically, we define a modifier, access specifier for each attribute and also for the functions. This is just to control who can access to that attribute and can change its value and so on, or can use that value. For most of the attributes, we do them private, which means that only a person who has access to that class definition can use it, which means that I can use those private attributes within the class, other functions of that class, within that class, but I cannot access them in other classes. And I had given that example, like why should we do it? Like why should I make an attribute private usually? Well, because again, this is not a course project like when we are thinking about object-oriented that you are the only person who is developing that. You might always think that, okay, we have a team of software developers working on a big project. And then what might happen is, like, if everyone has an access to every attribute, they might cause some problems. Like, let's say that we can do it as with one example. So let me open my Eclipse. Like if in my rectangle class, let's just remember that, what it was. We had this rectangle class in which we had defined width, height. Those are the attributes. And then if you don't make it private, it means that anyone can access, then anyone in this package can access these attributes. What does it mean is, like when I'm trying to create these rectangle objects, I can have a direct access to those attributes. And I can say that, like, okay, width can be this or that. Then the problem might be here is that now I'm allowing everyone to use that. Then maybe we have a person, a software developer who is not very talented, not very, I don't know, maybe careful. So then there's a possibility that they can assign some invalid numbers, like -5, and then the program will allow it. Like now we will have some rectangles that has a width -5. So this doesn't make sense. So I don't want this to happen. So what I can do is, now what I will do is, okay, I will make this private. When I make this private, what will happen is, now when I go back to here, now I'm getting an error message. As you can see that we have these red warning messages. The thing is that now Java is not allowing me to access those attributes from a different class. So this is main.java file. This is the rectangle.java file. So I can access those attributes here. As you can see, I can use them to calculate the area, but I cannot use them in any other file. Then, of course, you might ask, okay, good, we fixed that problem, but at the end of the day, I want to create this rectangle. I need to set the width and the height. So if you don't allow me to change it, then how can I do that? How can I change it? Because I need to create I need to set those attributes. Okay, I'm not able to do that. Then what? How can I do it? The solution is we have this getter and setter methods. So what does that mean? Well, for each attribute, this is the main convention. For the private ones, then we should do this. If I want them to be accessed in other Java files, I create a gather and setter functions. What is that? Well, for the width function, width attribute, sorry, I create this gather function. Basically, it returns width. That's it. This is the gather function for the width, and then I can also do it as a also the setter function. What does it mean is I want to change the variable, to assign a variable to width, so that but it needs to take a value, of course, and then I will just say, okay, this should be the width should be this one. So I can do this setting. We will see this later on, but it's not returning anything in Java. If a function is not returning any value, we should say that, okay, this is void. And what is this int? Well, we will come to that later on, but just as a very brief description, I am returning an integer value, so that's why I'm putting here an int. Now I had set this get and set for the width. Then I need to also do it for the get function and the set function. I also need to do it for the height. Now, could I give a different name for this function? Yes, I could. I could say get the width, whatever it is. I can give a different name and then I can use that. But this is a very powerful tradition in Java programming, especially. We don't come up with a very fancy name. We always do follow this naming tradition: get, and then the feature name; set, and then the feature name. And then and when I say that, okay, implement getters and the setters of this class, then you should understand that, okay, I need to implement get and set functions for each attribute in that in that class. And also, this is, as I said, a very powerful tradition. Like, if you are, for instance, if you are using Eclipse, there is even a functionality that allows you to automatically generate those gather and setter functions. Like, if you go to that class, then do a right click, and then if you go to this source, I need to find that. Yes, this source one. Then if you will see that there is this part which is generate constructors and so on. If you click this part, generate gathers and setters, well, I had defined already width, so that's why it is showing me only this height function. So when I click this part, and then when I hit the generate button, it will automatically generate, as you can see, the gather and the setter function for the height variable attribute. So if you have, let's say, 10 attributes and so on, typing them all will take time, and we don't like typing. But you can just automatically generate those gather and setter functions. Then what? Then what should I do? Well, now the good thing here is that now these are not private functions, which means I can access them in other Java files. Like for instance, now I created these rectangle objects, but I need to set their widths. I need to set their width to some values, and then also for the height. So now I can now I solve this problem. I can set their height, and I can also do the same thing for the other rectangle. Well, now you can say that, okay, what changed? Like, can you tell me, like, I was able to say that r1.width is 5. Now I'm saying that r1.set width and then 5. What is the difference here? Like, I can still now set, okay, it can be -5. Yes, please.
You can define a restrictions in the main class to restrict the allowed value.
Exactly, exactly. This is the point. Like for now, there's no difference. But what I can do is when I go to this set width function, okay, now I can put some rules here. Like, do you want to set it to if is this w is less than or equal to 0? Well, you might give it an error message. Like you can say width should not be less than 0. And what is your solution? Well, maybe you might say, okay, I won't do it. You might refuse to do anything. So you can just say return so that the function will be finished at that point. So we won't set the width. Or you might say, okay, if you give me an invalid value, then I'll set it to 1. Like maybe I have some default value. I don't know. This is your solution. Based on your program needs, you can do anything you like. But the thing is that now I can control, and then if there's any invalid results, then I can fix it here. Because in our scenario, what was it? Like we had some careless software developer who thinks that he can put some minus values for a width value in a rectangle. And then if he had access to the attributes very freely, so he was able to give those minus scores. But then now what I'm doing is I'm forcing that the same developer, he's still careless. Maybe he's really not a good developer, but so that's why he's still trying to make it a minus value for a width value. But I'm forcing that developer to use this set function. And then whenever he attempts to do this, I'm warning that. So I'm now controlling it. You cannot do this. And this might be really like, you might say, okay, width, well, it sounds weird to have minus value in a width, well, but who cares? Well, this is actually pretty important. Like, let's say that in an e-commerce platform, like, you have an attribute called text rate. And then that developer has an access to that, and then it set it to minus value, or change the text rate. Well, that's a big problem. Okay, then maybe the price of the items that you are trying to sell, and he has an access to those values, and then he set it to minus values, and so on. So they can really give a big damage to the company, to the software. So we don't want it. We don't want it. We want to control that because it's really not easy to develop a project in a group. Like in my own experience, for instance, I know that like back in the years, sometimes some of the students I hire them in a project, 3 of them works in it, and then they cannot finish it in 1 month. And okay, then I find one good student and he finishes it in 1 day. So it's really the success of the project really depends on the quality of the developers. It's not like always, okay, let's hire more developers then it will be solved. No, it is not the case because it's really not easy to work in a team project. So like if you have a really good 5 developers, then probably you will be able to implement many things. But if you have not so good developers like 100, well, that project will likely to fail. So now here actually we are trying to develop solutions so that it will be harder or to make the project fail. Okay, so we are actually trying to fill those gaps. Yes, please.
This developer can just change the main method.
Yes, this is the thing. Yeah, we are saying that, okay, you will not don't touch this rectangle.java. This is your responsibility. You are only working on this front end for this main.java, and we will not share that file with him. Yes. This is a yes.
What's the difference between private and final?
Uh,
Variables for variables.
that's a good question. Private is about accessibility. Like I cannot access these variables from other classes. Final is making it constant. So like if I say constant here, uh, final int, I don't know, the pi value is, of course it's not int, I will change it. I'll make it float. Okay, I can access it also here, like as here, but when I want to change it, some in a some function, so I can access it, which means I can use it. But if I try to change it, I will get an error because it is final, it is constant, I shouldn't change it. So one of them is about accessibility, the other one is whether you can change it or not. Shall I proceed? Okay, now going back to our slides. Still waiting. Yeah, okay. All right, let me see if I missed anything. I think, yeah, I did. I said it. Now, when we are defining a class, an object, we use this diagram, UML diagrams also, class diagrams, to design our project actually. What is that? Like I have an object, a Java file, a rectangle Java file, and then I have all these attributes and the functions and so on. But then, now again, the goal is that I will get into a team and I will explain my design to the others. Like I'm thinking of these kind of objects and they will have these attributes and these functions and so on. Then I can give them these files, but actually it's harder to understand. Like my point is not about how it is implemented and so on. First I want to say that, okay, what is this object is about? So instead of giving them this Java file, I will give this kind of like a diagram, okay, which actually contains all the important information that I need. And I want to emphasize on this. In midterm or so, there might be, or in a quiz, a question like this. I will give you this class diagram, and I'll ask them, okay, implement this one, okay? So this is actually an important part of, okay? So let's see what it means. Well, at the top I see that, okay, the class name, rectangle. And then here, I see the attributes, width and length. Double means their data type. You see that negative sign? It means that it is private. So it has a some strict notation. And then after this, below the line, we see the functions. The function names, they are all public. I understand it because there's a plus sign there. And then I understand whether they return value or not. So these two should be void. These three should return a double value. And these are not taking any parameter, but this one and that one is taking one parameter, and its type is double. So for the main structure of that class, I have everything in this small diagram. I don't provide how they should be implemented, but at this point I don't need it. I just want to say, okay, what are my actions and what are the attributes of these classes? This is the main part. Then I can give a software developer, okay, this is your class diagram, now implement this. Then he should be able to implement what is needed. Like for the get area, then he can check for how it can be implemented, and then they can implement it. But this is all they need, actually, mostly, to understand what this class is about. All right. Yeah, I've already talked about this. So let's give 1 minute break for attendance, and then we will continue.